Welcome to MFSN The Hub. I'm here with KC Flat to the Bone Shinefold. KC, say hello to everybody.
As a depressed Giants fan, I offer you all better luck
We'll
than
talk
I
about
have.
it. Don't worry, we'll talk about it. We're in the middle. We just started the baseball playoffs, but as I'm told by my producer, I can't talk baseball. So there you go,
Right.
KC. We love baseball, you and I. We follow it like crazy, but no, I can't talk about it. God
Nope.
forbid. But 1-0 Texas, third inning, little update. I have to just throw it in there, just grab my producer nuts. So we'll talk football. Let's talk about last night's game, KC Shinefold. Your New York Giants were at home. They embarrassed themselves. Taylor Swift was live from MetLife Stadium. She was rooting for her Kansas City Chiefs. It seemed the audience was rooting for the Kansas. The place was empty by the third quarter. I mean, the place cleared
Well, you're
out.
talking the Chiefs-Jets games, that's not the Giants and Seahawks game.
Oh, you're right. But let's talk about. Well, the thing about that game is I got confused because they both played in the same place in the same weekend. So let's start with the Jets first and the Chiefs, which was an onslaught too. The Jets. Well, it wasn't. It was only a 3-point game. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah, but that's because Mahomes slid before going into the end zone just so he could run off the clock.
But it was, Zach Wilson looked better. Everybody's down on the kid. I feel bad for the kid. I don't think he's as bad as everybody thinks he is.
Well, at what point do we start looking at Paul Hackett?
Simeon, baby.
No, I mean the offensive coordinator. Because remember, look, you can say the Broncos are awful this year, but Russell Wilson is a top 7 quarterback right now in points per game, fantasy-wise, and is throwing for as many yards as he did in some of his peak years in Seattle. But when Hackett was his kind of quarterback whisperer, he was terrible last year. Now he goes to Green Bay, to the Jets, because he had a good relationship with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he can coach Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers doesn't need coaching. And
no, I don't think Aaron Rodgers listened to an offensive coordinator deal.
So, no, I don't at all. I just think they were friends. And so I'm not, I haven't thrown the towel in on Zach Wilson, but he's going to get treated like a lot of top quarterbacks who had terrible development their first few years in the NFL and didn't work out. He's going to get treated like he's a bust, when the truth is the organization has to accept some of that responsibility.
Well, last night, Daniel Jones, he had no time to throw. I mean, that offensive line for the Giants was just god-awful.
They're missing their left tackle. Their right guard gets
Thomas
hurt.
is hurt. I saw that. And
their center got hurt, Schmidt.
But, I mean, he just looked awful. They only scored 3 points last night. I mean, it was embarrassing. Everybody left. I mean, it was like the stadium was empty by the fourth quarter. I mean, Casey, you're a diehard Giants fan, and you turned it off.
It was too hard to watch.
Is there anybody? I mean, when Barkley comes back, could he save this team? Is there any hope at all?
They're only 1-3, right? So if they play, what are there 13 games left? If they go 8-5, they're 9-8. Like, in that, who knows? Could be a wild card team. The thing that they don't, more than Barkley coming back, they need Andrew Thomas to come back and be the left tackle that he was.
Tackle, yeah, he's not pro. He probably could be the best tackle in the game.
And Neal, the right tackle, their top pick out of Alabama 2 years ago, has been awful at right tackle. So they have to figure out what's going on with him too.
Yeah, Neal's been bad. Their line has been bad. The only bright spot I thought for the Giants was Robinson, your slot receiver. I thought at times he looked good.
Wan'Dale Robinson looks good.
Yeah, getting the ball. I mean, they were doing a good job, but then all of a sudden they stopped.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I just felt, the Giants just looked awful. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I mean, their defense, although, I mean, they gave up the score wouldn't suggest it, but the defense played well considering there was a pick six. There was a fumble in in their own red zone, and so some of those points were not the Giants' fault, but that long touchdown by Fant, the tight end, or down to the 1 yard line, whatever it was, those were just some terrible tackles. But the defense, all in all, didn't play poorly.
Yeah, it was just bad tackling. I agree with you. The game that I saw, I watched my games on Red Zone, so I kind of watch every game. Was the Denver Broncos were at Chicago, and Chicago could have kicked a field goal, but instead they decided to go for it in the fourth quarter, 4th and 1. They didn't get it. Denver marches down and wins the game with a field goal. It was one of the worst work. I didn't get the coaching decision at all. I was there. I
Yeah,
was
I
just
mean,
amazed.
from a
Like, why would
fantasy
he do that?
perspective, we were right on Thursday when we talked about this is the time Justin Fields is finally going to put up QB1 numbers, and he did despite the interception at
4
the end.
touchdowns, right, Case? And
Most passing yards ever, his highest passing yard total and 4 touchdowns. So,
yeah.
But you're right. Like, the coaching was poor. And I didn't understand. I mean, Khalil Herbert had a good game. Don't get me wrong. But you only gave like 7 touches to Roshan Johnson. That didn't make a lot of sense with how good he's been the past few years. But
a few weeks, yeah.
Sorry.
I agree with you. I thought it was just bad coaching decision, and there's no way this guy's going to keep his job at the end of the season. He'll be the first one gone. It was just poorly coached. And I hate to blame the coaches sometimes, but that game I did.
And I don't want to do this to you, but the most disappointing team has been the Bengals, don't you think?
Oh, we all picked them to win the AFC
in a real
North
sense and in the fantasy sense. They've been the most disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, again, you go with their passing game was 160 yards, I believe he had. Joe Burrow, Joe Silk,
4 players picked probably in the first 5 or 6 rounds of the draft.
And Joe Silk, and T. Higgins is hurt. I don't think he's playing next week. He doesn't want to play. He's been dropping balls. He wants that big contract, and the Bengals said, we're not giving you a long-term contract, so find work somewhere else. They told him that.
Yeah.
I'm making it up. So he's not motivated. Good time to pick up Tyler Boyd, though. If you're a fantasy owner and you have a way to pick up Tyler Boyd, he's under. I think he's below 50% still. It's a good time to pick him up because I don't
whether
think
you
Higgins,
think Joe Burrow is gonna.
Yeah, I mean, how many more weeks can he throw 400, 200 yards?
At what point do you put him on the IR to force him to get healthy?
Now, do it now. Joey Silk, get on the IR. He's making so much money now. And do you think it's a money thing with him? Do you think it's motivation? Do you think he's one of these type of guys? He's doing commercials. I see him on doing commercials now. He's on TV all the time. I just don't feel he has that eye of the tiger anymore. That's coming from me. I'm a Bengals fan. I know
you are, and I'm not. I don't know him well enough, obviously, to comment on that. I don't like to think of somebody who's that good and worked that hard to get that good to kind of quit the second he gets paid.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I just don't get it either. George Tucci's here. Bengals need to trade and get Nathan York. Nathan York is on the practice squad for the Jets. No, for Jacksonville. He's a big CFL player. His brother plays in college. His brother's really good. George Tucci is actually one of the experts we have in Canada that knows the CFL game better than anybody I ever met in my life. This guy, he picks games. He talks about old players. He's unbelievable, this guy. I mean, he's one of the best in the business. But I agree with you, George. I think Nathan York could help the Bengals tremendously. Our backups gets getting Browning, and he's okay. I'm not jumping up and down. Casey, let's talk about waiver wire pickups. Let's talk about what players we should focus on for this week because we have to put those in tonight. Casey, tell me your top 5 players you want to pick up this week that are under say 60%. I was going to say 50, but let's say 60.
Okay. Well, we have to remember that this is the first bye week. So the Buccaneers, the Browns, the Chargers, the Seahawks, and the Rams.
It's first bye week.
We're all on bye this week. So those are some big names to replace. So if you're looking to replace a quarterback, Russell Wilson has been really good. He's still under 60%, and CJ Stroud.
Let's talk about CJ Stroud real quick. Casey, he still has no interceptions in his career. Is that correct?
Yep, 1,200 yards and no interceptions.
No interceptions. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And this guy is throwing for 300 yards a game. I mean, every game.
Now he's lost 2 fumbles, but
it's still not bad. I mean, Houston was projected to be like a last place team. Now I don't think they're a last place team. And during preseason, Casey, do you remember how bad he looked? He looked like
I know.
About deer in headlights. He had deer in headlights. I mean, he was just not ready for the NFL game at all. But now he's a whole new guy. He's running, he's throwing, he's scoring touchdowns.
Been great. So I mean, he's probably the top wide receiver. Add he and Russell Wilson at running back. I mean, the cover guy, obviously, Jaleel McLaughlin in Denver, Javonte Williams got hurt. I'm not sure how serious the injury is yet.
We'll find out. We'll find out tomorrow.
But McLaughlin, the thing that was interesting about him is he's a little guy. I mean, he's not a big bird, but they gave him the goal line carries instead of Samaje Perine. I thought that was interesting after Javonte got hurt. Another running back you could look at is Chuba Hubbard. Miles Sanders has been gimpy for the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, he's been hurt. He's not 100%.
And so Chuba, who has obviously always been a great handcuff because he was McCaffrey's backup for a while before then, that's somebody I'd look at. And then another guy you can target is either Jaylen Warren or Roschon Johnson. They're both under 60%. They're not the number one on their depth charts, but they could be soon enough.
I like that. And he was practicing today, and he's back.
Tomorrow, I think. Tomorrow.
Jonathan Taylor, he's back, baby.
And by Zach Moss, right? And Zach Moss has been great, and he's going to be gone.
Yeah, no, they'll actually play both guys. It could be a showcase for teams to probably trade for him, I imagine. I think that's the reason they're going to play this guy. I think they want to trade him, and I think they got to showcase him that he can play still. No one wants to invest a first-round draft pick in a guy that can't play football anymore, obviously. But it's big news fantasy-wise because he's been sitting on my bench for 4 weeks, collecting 0 points. And he's back. I mean, the Colts aren't as bad as we all thought they were going to be. Anthony Richardson looks great. I mean, I like that kid. He runs, he passes, and he's built like a linebacker. I mean, fantasy value, I think his fantasy value in the next 2 years is astronomical. I think it has no ceiling right now. He'll just get better. If they let him play, which they will, I think his value will go up and up every week for Anthony Richardson. But again, do I get one of those receivers on the Colts, Casey? No,
especially once Jonathan Taylor comes back. Then they're going to.
I don't want Pittman. I don't want Pierce. I don't want any of those guys. I just don't trust them.
Josh Downs in Dynasty would be the only one I'd be looking at.
Yeah, Downs in Dynasty. You said it. Downs in Dynasty, and that's it. But so who else fantasy wise am I picking up? We talked
wide
about
receivers. I mean, for somehow Romeo Dobbs.
Yeah, can you believe he's like
under 60%? He's at 54%.
Yeah, can you believe that? I just can't believe. I know Christian Watson's back, but still, it's like Dobbs has been getting the ball like crazy. I mean, I think he's like a guy that you should be picking up.
And in that same offense, Jaden Reed is getting a lot of targets.
Yep, he got 7, I think, last week.
You got Kendrick Bourne in New England. I mean, he's not putting up big numbers, but he's getting good volume. So
let me ask you a question with New England. You bring it up, I'll talk about it. What's the deal? Do you think Jones will be benched for Zap? I mean, do you think we'll see?
Well, he's got 4 picks in 4 games. That's not something Belichick usually tolerates very well.
So I'm not a Mac Jones guy. I know
I'm not either. If Atwater's if Atwater's watching, he might be able to tell us. Here you go.
I mean, yeah.
Would you trade Puka for Mark Andrews? It's a 14-team non-PPR.
Non-PPR, that's important.
He already has Hill and St. Brown with Dobbs on the bench. So he has Tyreek Hill and Amon-Ra St. Brown in a 14-team. Well, it's non-PPR. I guess wide receivers are a little down. What? Yes, I would pull that trade.
I would do it just because you have a big advantage having Andrews or Kelsey on your team. Andrews is having a good year, and he'll just get better.
Pitts, you fell into the seduction trap a lot of us drafters did with Kyle Pitts, and you're just not getting it. You have Dobbs on the bench, so you're good at wide receiver.
Just press accept.
Yeah.
Press accept.
I would do it.
I would do it. Puka's on a high right now. He's breaking all these rookie records. I get it. I think he's a great player to have on your team, but I'd rather have Andrews right now. Would you guys trade AJ Brown, top 10 receiver, and Waller, who's not playing as well as he should be, for Puka? Yes, press yes on that one. I would want
Bijan,
Puka.
just because Bijan's in there. You're clearly AJ Brown is the better receiver. Puka's putting up just as good in numbers though.
Better.
And Ferguson and Waller are pretty much a wash at this point, and you're getting Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I'd rather have Ferguson. Ferguson had his breakout game last week. He looked great. And Dallas loves the tight end, as Casey mentioned before the season started. Schultz had a great year. He's not doing that great in Houston.
We would do that right now because Waller's also going to miss a few games here soon anyway.
Yeah, he'll get hurt. The reason why
especially
he's
if the
not
Giants, especially if the Giants are like 1-5 or 1-6. You
playing.
don't want to be a part of that Giants offense right now. I mean, you just don't.
Yeah, it's true. I agree with Casey. I think Waller. Everybody had high hopes to the beginning of the year. I mean, he really disappeared last night. He was non-existent. Jones couldn't get anybody the ball. It was just a bad game for the Giants. I know they tell you.
And Josh,
bad.
I was noticing another wide receiver to get back to it. Josh Dobbs was looking at Michael Wilson a lot this past week, and he actually got a touchdown pass. So if you're desperate, he's only 4% owned. Michael Wilson is a sneaky rookie. He was a 4th round pick, I think.
4th round pick. Michael Wilson. He had 7 targets last week.
Yeah, and got a touchdoad and a bunch of yards.
He had 2 touchdowns, didn't he?
Oh, was it? Did he have both of them? He had 2 of them. I know he had at least one. I only saw one when I was watching.
No, he had 2, and yeah, he's a guy that you want to pick up. Dobbs likes he likes him, and Brown's having a good year too. Both guys in Arizona. They're going to Washington on Thursday night. Let's talk about that real quick, Casey.
Washington. That was an exciting game.
Washington's favored by 7 points. I think that's way too much. I know we don't like to talk about gambling here, but I just think that's a gift. Take Arizona. Arizona against the spread, I think they're like 3-1. I mean, they're every game they're in.
Arizona's been competitive in almost every game.
Yeah, I mean they should have beat the Giants.
They were down 21-0 to the San Francisco 49ers this past weekend, and then I turn it back to the highlights 20 minutes later or 30 minutes later, and it's 21-17.
And with the Eagles last week, they went to overtime.
They beat the Cowboys. I mean, the Eagles had an overtime game this past week against the Commanders. That was pretty exciting. Sam Howell throwing a touchdown at the end of the game, but then it was just a field goal to win in OT. But so this Thursday night, yeah, I agree with you. Although
Thursday it's Bears and in Washington. I think that's who's playing. It's not Arizona. Bears and Washington. Are playing, and I think the Bears are going to win their first game. I have a feeling. I don't know why, just because how Fields played last week.
So would you play Fields again this week?
I would. Thursday night, big stadium, big place. Actually, the game, because they don't have much time to prepare, which means Fields will be running the ball a lot. He's not going to go to his receivers that much. He'll be running a lot more. You know who's running the ball a lot this year, Casey? And he actually runs like he's speed walking, because he's like a flamingo with his knees. His knees bend like backwards. It's weird. Is Patrick Mahomes. His
running style.
If you watch him, Casey,
but he's effective.
No, I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying his knees like reflex backward. It's not hurting or anything, but it's just the way he's built. But he's been running the ball a lot because his receivers, they can't get open, because his receiving core. Do you think his receiving core to me is probably the worst in football? Do you agree? I mean, I could not think of a receiving core worse than his core.
The Giants.
Yes.
I mean,
I like Slayton. I like Waller, but I guess his receiver Kelsey's his only person he has. Yeah, Kelsey's his only guy. But his wide receivers with Rice and Moore and all those guys, it's just all underachieving. I'm so happy I just stayed away from those guys.
Yeah, I have you know what? Look, I wonder if your boy T. Higgins is sitting there saying, "Fine, don't extend me. I'll go to Kansas City and be Patrick Mahomes 1." All right. Would you trade Ventro? How you doing, bud? Would you trade James Cook, James Conner, and Tyler Lockett and Tyjae Spears?
This is a great trade. Wow,
You would trade them away for Joe Mixon, Zach Moss, Amari Cooper, and Jordan Addison. No, I wouldn't make that trade.
I love Cook, as you know. I love
Cook. I love Conner, and I love Lockett.
Connor's been running the ball like a maniac. He's the goal line guy. He's the first down guy.
If Jonathan Taylor is indeed back, Zach Moss becomes fairly irrelevant.
Guys, I can say this. I'm a Bengal fan. Mixon is useless in fantasy. He really is.
He'll have 3 big games where he scores 9 of his touchdowns for the year, and then he'll have 11 total.
He'll have 6 total, and he'll score 2 touchdowns in one game. That'd be it.
Yeah.
Zach Moss, as Casey said, he's going to lose some carries
I
because
mean,
Jonathan
Amari
Taylor's
Cooper is
back.
the number one in Cleveland, but how
Yeah, what does
valuable is that?
mean? It's
Jordan
like being the number one
Addison.
in New England.
I love Jordan Addison as a keeper. I don't know if I love him as a.
He had 0 points last week.
Essentially, Jordan Addison and Tyler Lockett are kind of a wash.
I'd rather have Lockett. That's me. Addison was 0 last week.
James Cook and James Conner are so much better than Moss and Mixon.
Casey, let's talk waiver wire pickups.
Okay, so we're saying no, Ventro.
We're saying no. Don't. It's not a good trade for you. Keep Cook.
Tight ends. We didn't talk about tight ends. Colt Kmet in Chicago. It looks like he and Justin Fields are on the same page again. Remember, Kmet was really good last year when Fields was starting to play better. If that connection is clicking, that's great for his value. Jake Ferguson, we just talked about in that trade. He's still only 54% owned. He is loved in Dallas. Zach Ertz is getting a ton of targets, and he's healthy in Arizona. They're going against Cincinnati at home this weekend.
Well, they'll beat Cincinnati.
And then Luke Musgrave in Green Bay. He went out with a concussion.
Banged up. Yeah, he's questionable for this week.
But he was spotted practicing today. I just read.
With who? They had practices on Tuesday? I thought they did run-throughs.
Musgrave was spotted practicing Tuesday. Rob Demovsky of ESPN.com.
Okay,
reported.
well, he's still questionable.
But if he's available at Las Vegas, that's not the worst matchup.
Not bad at all.
So if you're trying to replace, I don't know, Gerald Everett, Tyler Higbee, one of those guys, they're guys you can throw in to do a good job.
Okay, Casey, let's talk.
Did I miss anybody?
No, you didn't miss anybody. You did a great job. So let's talk defenses. I always like to talk defense because a lot of people still have defenses in their league, and they're like what I do is I stream them. I don't keep it.
I actually pegged 4 different defenses that were under 60% that I liked this week. Go,
and I'll give you if they're good or bad. Go.
Detroit at home against Carolina.
Detroit gives a lot of points up, but Carolina, I like them better when they had
Detroit had 7 sacks.
I like when Dalton was the quarterback. I thought Dalton was a lot better than Bryce Young.
Yep.
But yes, I think that's a good one. Bryce Young.
Let me ask you this: since we just brought up Bryce Young, I'll ask you this on the air. If Atwater's listening, I want him to chime in. Chris Atwater just offered me in our Dynasty League a 2024 and 2026 first-round pick.
I love these. The thing about Dynasty guys, it's like all these draft picks and like 4th-round picks for this guy, and it's like it's madness. But keep going.
So would you
trade? What was the offer, real quick? Tell me what it was.
Bryce Young for 2 first-round picks, 2024 and 2026 first-round picks.
Giving away the farm for that quarterback. Let me think about it. I'll give you an answer later.
All right. Should he trade? Hi, JAC. Should I trade Adam Thielen and Rashad White for Raheem Mostert and Cortland Sutton? I probably would, because Rashad White has been one of the most inefficient runners so far this year. And Thielen is good, but Cortland Sutton is that X receiver in a Sean Payton offense, which made Michael Thomas the best receiver in football for like 3 or 4 years. So I would probably make that trade.
Mostert to me is just, he's going to get hurt. I hate to say it. He's a guy that gets
and Achane or whatever. Achane,
I think it's Achane.
He's been getting a lot of carries now. He scored 2
touchdowns. Mostert only had like 3 carries last week. I think I saw that.
It depends. If you have 2 other good running backs on your roster, then I would make that trade.
I would too. Casey, so defense, Detroit, I like it. What's your next one?
After that, I went with Jacksonville at Buffalo.
And that game's it's in London, and those
Sunday night
games, it's Sunday morning.
Sunday morning, sorry.
It's like early morning.
In London.
I hate those international games. Don't get me started, please. I think there's the worst idea ever. Like, let's have games in London where we have to wake up at like 6:30 in the morning here on the West Coast to watch.
I just don't think they're going to throw
football.
Up. Yeah.
And also, I'm a season ticket holder for Jacksonville, so that's one less game I get to go to. You know what? That's embarrassing, NFL, and to have the players be there for 2 weeks like Jacksonville is, because they have 2 games to row in.
I know.
It's just
away
I
from
mean,
their families and all that
well,
stuff.
also like they're going to get in trouble. They're grown men. They're not going to listen to some curfew. They're out in London. They're going to be partying and drinking beer and getting in fights.
So
That's what I would be doing.
I also like Houston against Atlanta
I know
because
nothing about Houston's defense,
I
but I
don't. But
know I
they
know
haven't
Atlanta
been
can't throw the
bad.
ball, so I like that one.
Yeah, and then I hate to do this to you, Arizona at home against Cincinnati.
I would take the Arizona defense. That's
So
that's how that's how
is
that's
that's
how I
just
feel about the Bengals. I think the Bengals are
well,
just
if
an
it makes you feel
embarrassment.
better, I took Seattle's defense last night, so I had a good night. So
Trader. Let's talk games coming up this week, and we talked about a lot of them already. Thursday night, the Bears are playing Washington, I believe.
I think the
Uh,
Sunday night game is probably the best game of the week, isn't
so
it?
let's talk fantasy now. The Giants are playing the Dolphins. Casey, I'm
Oh,
sure you're excited to see that game.
that could be
Um,
like 47-4, 47-6.
I think Tua is going to be the highest grossing fantasy player next week. He's my pick
Interesting.
to have the highest most points. I think he'll have one running. He'll have 3 touchdown passes throwing. He'll have 300 yards. He'll really go after the Giants defense. So if you have any Dolphins, you start them ASAP. Giants, I wouldn't unless Barkley's back. That's the only one I would start. No one else. Case.
Yeah, no, you're not touching
No,
anybody
no one
else.
else. Saints, Patriots, Boarfest. I wouldn't even. I guess the Olave and
Yeah, and I mean, if you think Kamara is going to
kind of
be,
boring.
yeah,
It sounds like a Boarfest. What's a 40-point total? I would probably It's not gonna be much scoring. It's going to be like a 30-point total. Baltimore, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's quarterback I heard might play.
that's going
Pickett.
to be, yeah, that's just going to be a slugfest. They're
I
just going to
mean,
beat each other up.
another like AFC North beating up, low scoring game. Stay away. Detroit's at home. Anytime Casey and I say Detroit's at home, it's a good play.
For
It's a good
Detroit,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, Montgomery had a huge game last week. Golf, you and I both love.
St.
St.
Brown.
Brown, you and I both love. Reynolds, I might sprinkle him in there a little bit. If you have him, I might start him. It just depends
Yeah.
who's on the bye
Jameer
week.
Gibbs on a bye. I mean, he hasn't been getting a lot of touches, but he can go
He'll
off at
get,
any
he'll get
moment.
more, but Montgomery's their main man. Atlanta is at home against Houston. We talked about it. CJ, let me ask you a question in all seriousness. CJ Stroud, Casey, would you, I mean, is he a must start? I mean, do you
He's
start him
definitely a must start in Superflex. But I mean, when you're looking at who you draft, because you draft him as your number 2 if you drafted him, right? Or picked him up.
maybe number 3. I mean,
Right.
he had that
And so-
bad of a preseason, Casey.
But if you
Not joking.
drafted, if he was your backup to Justin Fields, I know Fields had a good last week and could be good against Washington this week, but I would
Okay,
trust
let's play
CJ
these.
Stroud more.
Let's play. I'll
Well,
give you. I'll give you a few quarterbacks. And you tell him if you would start him over CJ Stroud. Are you ready?
Yep.
Stafford of the Rams.
Well, yes, because he's on a bye this week.
The Rams are.
Yeah, the Rams are on bye this week.
They're playing the Eagles.
What? Oh, okay. Browns, Chargers, Seahawks, Buccaneers. I don't know why I have Rams on my one.
You like the Rams. So Stafford or Stroud? Who do you start?
Stroud against Atlanta or Stafford against the Eagles. If the Eagles have their defense together, then I'm starting Stroud.
Okay, here's a good one, Casey. Do you start? Are you ready? Derek Carr or Stroud?
Oh, Stroud.
Joe Burrow or Stroud?
That was the one I was waiting for. I think I would start CJ Stroud. You have 4 weeks of Burrow not being effective.
There you go. That's why I wanted to tell my audience. Not because you drafted Burrow in the top 3 rounds or whatever you drafted.
I drafted him in the first round in our one Superflex league. So
yeah. So again, I would, it just shows you like the power of these rookies and why it's important to draft some work, sprinkle them in sometimes in your draft, and go against the grain. Everybody says, "Oh, this guy is a flop." He's not even close.
yeah.
If he keeps playing like he's playing, Casey Scheinfeld, he's going to be an All-Pro. I mean, this guy's going to be in the Pro Bowl.
But Houston fans are going to be
cares.
mad at him because they were hoping to have.
Okay, Casey, this game to me could be the best fantasy game for players to start this week. Probably
Minnesota, Kansas City.
Yeah. So let's talk. Let's talk Kansas City. Kelsey, Mahomes,
Yep,
Pacheco. Any
absolutely.
receivers? Any other receivers for Kansas City, Casey?
Maybe Rashee Rice.
That's a maybe. So that's a no. Let's
Yeah.
talk Minnesota. I
Oh, you're
mean, you got to start.
you
You got to
got to
start Kirk Cousins. I mean, you
Kirk
start him.
Cousin, Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson are all definites. Do you start Madison, or do you
That's.
see what they're going to do with Cam Akers? I think you have to wait on that backfield a week.
I think you're right, but I think it's going to be an
But it's going
offensive
to be a shootout.
display.
I wouldn't start either of those defenses.
No, no, of course not. It's going to be. It's going to be like a. It's going to be a 60-point over under. What is the over under? It's 53.5, which is high for NFL.
That's crazy.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's going to go up to 54. Again, we don't promote gambling. Just for this, for your fantasy plays, it's always good to look at
Do you
over
play
unders.
anybody in the Pittsburgh versus Baltimore game?
Well, of course, of course, the quarterback.
Lamar Jackson and Zay Flowers probably, but anybody
Yeah,
else? Mark Andrews. What about on Pittsburgh? Do you run George Pickens out there? Do you run Kenny Pickett out there? Do you think Najee Harris is going to do anything, or Freiermuth?
no.
We are both very high on Freiermuth, and he's been a dud.
He's been a dud, and that happens. I mean, you and I might
Oh
be
yeah,
high on players and down on players, and they surprise us, and that's the great thing about fantasy football. There's no locks. I wish I could say this is a lock. There's no such thing in sports. But I agree, and probably the best game non-fantasy, but my game I'm most excited to watch, if that makes sense to you, Casey Schoenfeld, is Dallas is playing Sunday night at Santa Clara against the 49ers.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun game.
I love this game. It reminds me of the 80s. Remember those Montana and Troy Aikman games that you used to watch when you were a kid, and you were sitting there with your family and you were like loving it, wearing your Aikman jersey and eating McDonald's. I remember those days.
You want to know what's funny? I was never a Dallas fan, but I had a neighbor who was, and he outgrew his Danny White jersey. So I had a Danny White jersey for a few seasons.
And you know where Danny went to college, right?
Did he go to University of Arizona?
No, he went to Arizona State, the better school. So 49ers, I mean, McCaffrey, Casey, in all seriousness,
is the best player in football right now.
I mean, MVP.
He's the best player in football right now.
MVPs like fluctuate. Like last week it was Tua. This week it's Josh Allen. He had a great game, and now I have to say it's McCaffrey. That's my MVP.
Offense to me, the offensive MVP is McCaffrey. The defensive MVP is
who's the so overall MVP is okay. I got it.
Is McCaffrey.
So McCaffrey start.
Ayuk has been awesome.
Ayuk went to a great school. He's been great.
Kittle, you got to start. He's healthy.
He's been dismissive,
but you got to start him. Brock Purdy, I think you throw out there too.
Brock Montana, we call him here on MFSN.
So after remember, they're missing the Dallas. Trayvon Diggs is out for the year, so they're missing their best cornerback.
He hurt his leg, non-contact drill. He hurt his leg in practice, and he's out for the year. It just shows you like how these guys are so. They're so skeptical for injury. You know what I mean? It's just amazing to me that they could be fine when they start practicing and then in the practice they tore their ACL. You know what I mean? I played softball on Sunday and we were in the 7th inning. We were winning, and I was on deck, so I got a great view of this. Yeah. And there was a pop up to the first baseman. First baseman had to run to get the ball. All of a sudden, he goes down like a rock, starts yelling.
Oh, that's bad.
Yelling. And I thought it was Achilles, but it was his groin. But he couldn't even walk. I mean, it was that bad. I mean, it was non-contact either. He was just running to get the ball. And Ross the Boss always stretches before he plays softball. Always. It's a must.
That's smart.
But, it just shows you how you got to take care of your body. And I feel bad for that Diggs guy. He was great last year. He had a bunch of interceptions. So, Dallas 49ers, I mean, Pollard, I guess, who else do you start? I guess
you got to throw CeeDee Lamb out there. Yeah. If it's super flex, you're absolutely starting Dak in a single quarterback league.
Dak or CJ Stroud, who do you start this week?
CJ Stroud.
Would you ever think in 1,000 years you would say that?
No, not this early, obviously. You and I aren't huge Dak fans, but
no.
But still, fantasy-wise, he's been relevant.
No,
but I mean, if San Francisco has their full defensive line in play, and Fred Warner at linebacker, and like they can shut down anybody. So whereas Atlanta has been better on defense, but they haven't shut anybody down.
I'm talking about Dallas.
No, I'm talking about C.J. Stroud is going against Atlanta's defense.
Yeah. Atlanta's been not the greatest defensive team, even though they improved a lot from last year.
Yeah, but still.
But they lost pretty bad to Jacksonville in London, and then they fly back and they have to go through the whole time change and all that stuff. I hate those London games. I really do. I wish the NFL would just wise up and just get rid of it. I know they want to. I think they want to move Carolina or Jacksonville to London. Is that the rumor, Casey? Is that the reason they're doing these games?
Well, and the owner is I think he's Middle Eastern, but he's a resident in.
Oh, the guy with the mustache that I like.
Yeah,
you should grow one of those mustaches.
I would need to paint it on. I'm not really. When I hit puberty, I'll let you know.
Casey, flat to the bone. So I'm looking at the card. I mean, those are the games that kind of focused on for fantasy, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think Green Bay, Las Vegas Monday night is fantasy relevant because Las Vegas's defense hasn't been that good, and Green Bay, Jordan Love's been awesome. Aaron Jones hopefully has another week he hasn't played in 10 days again, so maybe he's been able to get back up to speed. Romeo Doubs has been awesome. Christian Watson is back. If Luke Musgrave comes out of the protocol, that's good.
Who's at home? Wait, who's at home in that game? Is it
Vegas at Las Vegas.
God, they love having games in Las Vegas, don't they? Primetime games?
Primetime games, absolutely.
Spreads 2.5, 44.5. Those games on primetime always go under. I don't love it, but we'll see. We got a question about fantasy, Casey. Why don't you read it?
Well, Ventura would like to know if he should trade James Cook for Raheem Mostert and Christian Watson. Right now, his wide receivers are Pickens and Devontae Smith and Lockett on a bye. So he'd be, Raheem
Mostert to me is just a time bomb waiting to explode because he's going to get hurt. I'm just saying this now because I don't want you guys to cry when he goes on the IR and you're saying, oh my, you told me to trade from. I'm telling you right now, don't trade for Mostert.
Yeah, Mostert is losing value each week because Achon is gaining it.
Achon's gaining, and plus they're throwing the ball to Hill. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. Hill, Waddle. Do the Waddle for me real quick. Okay, thanks. Okay. But don't trade for Mustard.
I would ride Pickens and Devonta Smith for this week. You can pick up somebody on the waiver wire who will get you through Lockett's bye week, and
we mentioned some big receivers too.
James Cook.
You mentioned Reed from Green Bay, who I like also this week.
Yeah,
and Tyler Boyd is my pickup just because I don't think T. Higgins is going to be out a lot. I mean, he doesn't want to play. I don't think anybody understands that. The Bengals said no to your big contract, and he's out there risking his life every game.
Marvin Mims in Denver is available in a lot.
Marvin Mims, and as we said, he's
Michael Wilson in Arizona is gaining value in fantasy. He's only 4% owned.
And Dobbs is quarterback too. I mean, you know what? If I needed to
play pretty well,
I mean, I would probably start Dobbs in some certain weeks if I had him on my bench.
I'd start him over Danny Dimes, who a lot of people drafted.
Danny Dimes would be dropped after the game last week. Dropped. I wonder how many people dropped Justin.
Running for his life.
I wonder how many people dropped Justin Fields like 2 weeks ago, and they're regretting it.
I was one of them. Now I managed to pick him back up before the game, so I still had him play for me, but I did drop him for C.J. Stroud.
I love it. I love when people make mistakes, like they drop people because of one game. Question, and then we'll go. Any more questions you guys have about trades or who you should start? Ask us right now because we're almost done with the show. Casey, Joe Burrow. Do you drop him? I mean,
no, you can't drop Joe Burrow.
Okay, let's just talk about it. So, how many weeks are left in the regular season of fantasy football?
14. 8? Oh, in fantasy football, there are
8.
9. I think it goes through 14, week 14.
Okay, so we're
15, 16.
So there's 10 more games in fantasy football, correct?
Yeah, 9 more games, something like that. Yeah, 9 or 10 more games.
So
but he can single-handedly win you 5 if he gets hot. Like,
you know what, folks? I bench him. I would start CJ Stroud over him so
I'd
quick every
start
week
over him
because
right now, but I couldn't drop him, is what I'm saying.
I would just love to. I love dropping people on my bench just for spite. It's my favorite thing to do, Casey. I love it.
But it's like, are you going to pick up Russell Wilson for the rest of the season? Are you going to pick up Mac Jones or
nobody's picking a Mac Jones? No one's going to the waiver wire to pick up Mac Jones.
So that's why you can't drop him.
Is Kyrie Murray ever going to be back in the NFL, or is he just
Kyler Murray? Kyrie Murray, no. But Kyler Murray's supposed to be back in the next few weeks. But again, Dobbs is playing well, so they're not going to rush him back.
Did you see the?
I think they're going to replace him next year anyway.
Did you see Dobbs when he went to the store in the Cardinals store at the stadium and he wanted to buy a Dobbs jersey, and they didn't. He did an Instagram on this, and they didn't have his jersey there. And they have they have everybody on this team. They have every number, everybody's jersey except his, and he's been the starting quarterback there since week 1. And he was very nice about it. I mean, he was in the studio. He was going to buy it. He didn't want anything for free, but they didn't have it. They don't recognize him as a player in the store.
Yeah.
And he was humble. He was nice. He wasn't angry. I would have been going nuts. That's Ross. I would go nuts. So I guess he put on his Instagram as a nice way, and then the team sends him a jersey. He wanted to buy a jersey for his one of his relatives, and so they sent him a jersey, and they say your name's now in the store.
All right, we have a question from Andrew Guyman. What trade value do you give Cooper Kupp?
Well, me living in Los Angeles and wearing a blue shirt like the Rams. I'm not a Rams fan, but I like the color on me. So his trade value for me is not that high, because if he's not playing and these are important weeks, he means nothing.
I think if I knew he was coming back in the next week or two and was
there's no timetable. I look every day.
And he was going to be at full strength, I would put his trade value as a top 12 wide receiver. And you could probably get a good quarterback or a great running back for him if you knew he was healthy. I don't think people will give you much. I mean, you could get Raheem Mostert from Ross.
It'll be hurt in 2 weeks, but yeah, you can do that.
Maybe you can get Joe Burrow from Ross if you have Cooper Kupp.
There's another guy. I mean, the question is, some people value him kind of high. If I could get like Swift, not Taylor Swift, but DeAndre Swift out of the Eagles, I mean, I would probably do that trade for Kupp.
Did you see the picture of Jason Kelce and DeAndre Swift?
Yeah,
that they posted in response to Travis and Taylor.
Loved it.
I think Kupp probably has the most value to whichever one of your owners has Puka Nacua or Tutu Atwell. Yep. Because when he comes back, the person whose value he's going to take the most from is one of those two. So if I was going to trade him to somebody, that would be where I would go.
But the rumor in LA, this is rumor, he'll be back in 2 weeks. That's the rumor. He's not coming back this week. Watch, he's practicing tomorrow, and he's back against the Eagles. The Eagles are playing here. The Eagles are at home. There are going to be more Eagles fans at SoFi.
In SoFi, yeah.
And so the Rams play. Like there'll be more fans for the Eagles than Rams fans. I mean, the Eagles fans are rabid here in LA. I have a lot of friends that are Eagles fans that all be at the game.
Eagles fans are rabid everywhere.
Yeah, I mean,
I lived in Philly for 5 years. They're not my cup of tea.
I don't like Eagles.
I was there. Either. I was in Philly during the Terrell Owens, Donovan McNabb saga, so it was a pretty unique time. And when Iverson and Dikembe took the Sixers to the finals, so it was a good time to be a Philadelphia sports guy.
Okay, Casey, what's your projection? Who's going to have the biggest game fantasy wise this week coming up?
Kirk Cousins.
You like Kirk Cousins? I'll take Tua. I told you I'm excited about Sunday night. I think that's the game everybody should watch. We'll talk about that game first next week. That's going to be a classic matchup. Both those teams will be in the playoffs. Both those teams could play each other again in the NFC Championship. I think they're either 1 or 2 or 3 best teams in NFC. But you know what? We'll see what happens. It's going to be a good game. This guy Brock Montana,
he's pretty good.
He hasn't lost a regular season game. I mean, he's like 11 or 12-0. Is that correct, Casey
It's
Scheinfeld?
crazy. Yeah, he's
I
been
mean, it's like I may make fun of him, but the guy all he does is
the guy
win.
wins. But so did Tim Tebow. Look what happened to him.
Yeah, I love Tim Tebow though. I loved him when another show. If any of you guys have Netflix, there's a show called Swamp Kings on Netflix, and
Oh yeah, the
it's about the whole time when
Urban
Tebow came.
Meyer.
Urban Meyer. It's about more about Urban Meyer, but he recruited Tebow, and they have great footage of that. I mean, it's done great. And if you like football, especially college football or sports at all, it's tremendous. Must watch. So Casey, that's it for the show. I will see you Thursday at 4:30, 1:30 Pacific, and we'll talk more about
And hopefully
strategy in
and
depth. And we'll have Dr. Dan Ratner here, which is exciting and new.
and we'll have better start sits because we'll know more about the injury report by then. So
Yeah,
be
exactly.
sure to tune in.
Be sure to tune in. I'm Ross the Boss. That's Flat to the Bone. We'll see you guys on Thursday. Thanks for watching.